So Mike Flanagan is the living embodiment of this meme.
How was the heat for you?
I didn't even notice it.
Seriously, this guy has released a new movie or series every single year for like the last 8 years. He has been putting out content and work at a speed that is just inhuman. It just makes absolutely no sense. Not just the amount, but the quality of the stuff he's putting out. I seriously believe that Mike Flanagan is not only one of the best horror, if not the best horror filmmaker working today, I think he's one of the 10 best filmmakers alive today. Just at the pure fact that he's made so much great content in just such a little small period of time, it's so impressive. So for this video, I'm going to be honoring Mike Flanagan by ranking all 12 of his works that I have seen. I think they're all pretty good, but I'm going to be ranking them from best to worst, or from the worst to best, actually. There are a couple of these that I don't love, but for the most part, I pretty much love every single one of these. Some of them a little bit more than others, as you'll see. Before I get started, there is going to be a slight spoiler warning for some of these. Also, leave your rankings down below. If you like Mike Flanagan, let me know what your favorite Mike Flanagan movies are, or shows. All right, let's get right into it. So The Midnight Club is definitely my least favorite work from Mike Flanagan. It's a show that I think had so much potential, and I was very, very excited when it was first announced and I had read the little log line for it. This idea of all these kids, these terminally ill kids that come together and they tell each other scary stories, and it can be kind of like this episodic anthology series where every episode is this new horror, and it all kind of builds up to a joint story, and something like that really compelled me and really, really interested me. But the main place the story actually eventually goes wrong is the fact that it's not a singular story. It's a story that was meant to be more than a limited series, and it was supposed to be a multi-series event, a multi-season event, which I'm not sure if it's ever going to get a season 2. So going into this show expecting it to be like Flanagan's other miniseries, his other limited works, which are, 8-episode, one-story series, I was kind of expecting that, and unfortunately I didn't get it. So all of the interesting mysteries that this show sets up early on, you just never really get a compelling and satisfying conclusion to it, because they left a lot of it open for a second season. But I will say, though, a lot of what makes Mike Flanagan great, a lot of the horror stuff is found in many of the episodes here. There are a lot of really good episodes and a lot of great moments here. There are really memorable characters and performances, and overall, I think there's a lot of people that would find a lot of enjoyment out of the show. I just definitely think it's the weakest work from him when it comes to the total package. Before I Wake is just kind of forgettable. I watched this movie a couple years ago, and I honestly just don't really remember anything about it. I just remember it being kind of a long and slow horror movie that had its moments, that has its Mike Flanagan flair to it. It centers around this boy, and it's got this whole interesting concept around, like, sleeping, I think. But to me, the fact that I have forgotten so much about this movie just tells me that it's really not that great, and I gotta put it at number 11. It's probably my least favorite film of his, but Before I Wake, I do know a lot of people really like it, so I'm sorry if I offended you. The Haunting of Bly Manor for the longest time was my least favorite Flanagan project, I thought at least, because I just thought the show was so much slower and so much weirder than many of his other films and obviously his other series that he had done. And I went into this kind of expecting it to be similar to Hill House, and it's really not. And honestly, it's probably a good thing. And at the time, although I wanted it to be like Hill House, it's definitely the best choice that it was something completely different, and it was Mike Flanagan trying something new and trying to tell a different kind of story here. But this show for me was just a little bit too mind-bending. There were things that really just didn't make a lot of sense to me, maybe because I'm stupid and I'm dumb and I don't understand, like, higher level writing. I do think the performances here are cool. I think the twist around the mid-season point was really kind of cool. I think the ending was good. I think the sound design, I remember the music also being really good here. I think overall, this is a good package. It's a really entertaining show, and I know a lot of people that absolutely love this and would rank it near the top 3 of a Mike Flanagan ranked list, but for me, it's just not my favorite. So I just watched Oculus for the first time recently, and it is a really, really weird and mind-bendingly incredible horror film that just didn't really work for me. But I can understand why this might be somebody's favorite thing. I mean, this is a very, very cool concept and a real mind-bending, almost acid trip of horror that Mike Flanagan takes us on. There's some really cool performances here. You have some really, really cool and unique scares. Some really, really unique scares. And a concept that really reminds me of some older horror movies for some reason. I don't know. This movie just, overall, I really enjoyed it. I can't rank it any higher because I do think the third act kind of falls apart a little bit, at least for me. The third act I didn't love, so I have to rank it this low, but it's still a very good movie. Absentia is Mike Flanagan's first ever movie, his first full movie that he gets credited for as a feature film. It's a movie that was made on a very small budget, very clearly. It was definitely an indie movie, so if you're somebody that does not like watching movies that are clearly a little bit cheaper, you're probably not going to enjoy this, but I absolutely loved it. I think it's got a really cool concept. I think the script here and the story that Mike Flanagan created in this world and this concept of this tunnel, and mixing that with themes of relationships and love, I just loved it all. It was really, really great, and there are some really creative scares here, and honestly, this thing was really motivating as somebody who's trying to make films at this kind of level. Geralds Game is actually really terrifying, in my opinion. It's a very simple movie. It's just about a girl who's in her room and some creepy shit happens. It's a very, very simple movie, but the story here is definitely extremely entertaining, and there are some really terrifying moments in this film, some really good imagery, some incredible characters that I don't want to spoil, but man, there's some really cool stuff in here. Geralds Game is a really surprising movie. I think it's based off a Stephen King short story. I might be wrong on that, so correct me if I'm wrong. But this is a movie that I was afraid to watch, if I'm going to be honest, because I just heard that it was really creepy, and it is a really creepy movie. It's one of Flanagan's weirdest and scariest works, but it's also a very emotional and well-performed story that I enjoy. The prequel to the first terrible Ouija movie, the second Ouija movie, I think it's called Origins of Evil, is so much better than it ever should have been. This movie is absolute bonkers. I mean, it's very simple. It's a really simple, safe script, but man, does it utilize every single second of that runtime to instill as much fear into the audience as it possibly can. This movie is legitimately terrifying. I mean, there are some crazy, crazy shots and effects that are done in this movie, specifically with the little girl, that are just, it's so well made. I think the actual concept of the Ouija and the house that they're in and all that stuff is done really, really well. I think all the actors involved did a great job. I think it builds up to a really unique conclusion that I don't really know how it sets up the original film, because I haven't been able to sit through the entire thing. I've heard it's dog shit. But overall, I mean, this film really goes to show how Mike Flanagan can take something that shouldn't be great and turn it into something that's 10 times better than it should be. Hush is yet another film where Mike Flanagan challenged himself to do something unique and different in this genre. This is a simple home invasion movie, except it follows a main character who is deaf. Therefore, Mike Flanagan is able to play around with this, this setting and this character and ways to, have scares around somebody who's deaf. And it works so well. I mean, this movie goes through so many twists and turns, so many reveals, so many big moments, so many interesting effects, and it goes through so much, doing it all and layering it with this character who is deaf and trying to let the audience kind of experience what they are experiencing. And because of that, it's just a really unique film. I've never seen anything like Hush, and I think if you watch it, you'll know exactly what I mean. It's a great movie. I definitely recommend checking it out. Like, it's honestly such a surprise of a film. Dr. Sleep is a film, and honestly a novel, that should have never worked, because The Shining is one of the greatest films ever made, and trying to make a sequel to that film without Stanley Kubrick, the same universe, the same everything, and trying to make a sequel all these years later just seems a little stupid and impossible. I think one of the best first steps was not calling it The Shining 2 and calling it Dr. Sleep so it could seem like an original movie. But overall, the attempt here is amazing. This is a fantastic movie, despite it being extremely dark and devoid of all, positive emotion. Ewan McGregor plays Danny from the first movie, and oh my god, I love Ewan McGregor. Everything he's in, he's great, and he's amazing in this film, and he brings so much emotion to this character, and he really hits on all the nightmares and the traumas that he feels going all the way back from the first film. And I think the overall plot here is really great. I think the weird villains, which Rebecca Ferguson, I think, played the main villain, if I can remember, I think they're really great and really well done. I think returning to the Overlook Hotel was just so crazy and gave me so much chills when I watched it for the first time. I think this honestly gets the whole series and the whole world to a really honest and satisfying conclusion that even the first film didn't really land on. The music in this movie is great. There's scenes that just were really out there and really big risk-taking moments that I did not expect to see in a movie in this caliber. Overall, Dr. Sleep is really, really great, and it's another film that had no right to be as good as it is, but it is amazing. Easily Mike Flanagan's best film to this point. The Haunting of Hill House was the first massive, massive series that Flanagan had made for Netflix, and really the first time that he had been exposed to a very, very large audience. Hill House is excellent, telling a story that is not only just terrifying, but extremely, extremely emotional in dealing with the ideas of grief and regret and moving on, and it is such a layered story that just unfolds perfectly and perfectly, and it's so emotional and so sad, and I loved every second of it. My only complaint about the show is I do think the ending kind of falls flat. The ending has never worked for me. I think it is so unsatisfying, and I've just always hated that last episode. Therefore, I can't rank it higher than this, but if that last episode had been a little bit better, this would be number 1. Mike Flanagan's newest show, The Fall of the House of Usher, is amazing. It is a damn near perfect limited series. Following the House Usher, Mike Flanagan takes the old Edgar Allan Poe stories and he takes them into modern times and tells them in a Succession-like manner where he mixes both Succession and horror and all of his flair with his writing and his filmmaking and mashes them together in a perfect show, and it is so satisfying to watch. It is a great show. This amazing group of characters, all that have their own interesting quirks and everything. Each one of them has their own episode where something terrible happens to them. The kills are really satisfying. The music is great. The twist and how it slowly unfolds the mystery of the circumstances that are happening is done really, really well. The ending is satisfying. Everything about the show is just top-notch filmmaking, top-notch writing, and it is just amazing. It is an amazing, amazing show. And because it's so new, I won't spoil anything else. Go watch The Fall of the House of Usher. It is definitely worth it.
Still how my song shall be.
Midnight Mass for me was one of my favorite things ever when I first watched it. I think this show is so perfect. I just don't have enough words to describe how much I love it. This show is a long and detailed conversation on belief and religion and life and death and all of these things that I think we all think about almost on a daily basis. And it tells this story of this small community that is so interconnected by their faith and their love for God and their love for religion, and mixing it with this incredible twist and this incredible supernatural element. The show is just so amazing. And I have to shout out Hamish Linklater. He is incredible in this movie playing Father Paul. I just can't even describe. Sorry, I think I said movie, but show. He is so unbelievable in this. There are some scenes and some moments that are just Oscar-worthy. He absolutely makes this thing as good as it is. I mean, there are a lot of great moments in this show. There's so many actors. Every single actor in this cast has a moment. They have a scene. They have a moment in this show where they get to shine and spread their wings and show how good both their performances and how good Mike Flanagan's writing is. The show has so many twists and turns throughout, and then it builds and builds and builds, and it builds to one of the best endings I have ever seen for anything. The ending of the show got a certified Joe Marchione tier my first watch through, and not only did it do that, but it just left me shooken and frozen for minutes and minutes after it had already ended. It is just such a beautiful ending. Go watch Midnight Mass. I know the first episode's a little bit slow, but get through it, watch it. I promise you won't be disappointed. This is a phenomenal show, and it is worth every second of your time. That's the video. As you can see, I love Mike Flanagan. Let me know your rankings down below. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to like this video. We'll see you guys in the next one.